Don't. Hello, hello, everyone. Here's
Hi,
Hi. How are you, Romain?
fine, fine, and you?
I'm good, pretty good. Right now we have been doing this. This is the first time we have this English streaming on my channel. This is gonna be the starting point. So it's gonna be hard to do the next one because we don't have an easy one for the first one. So uh, we're I don't know what can I say. Welcome here, Romain. This is Community Rain.
Thank you for
Uh,
having me.
yeah, so we have much to do. Let's give it a couple minutes for people to start arriving and getting plays. It's a weird time maybe in all the places because right now is Saturday. For
Yeah.
America, it's like noon, around noon. Other places is like lunchtime, and other place maybe it's dinner time. So don't worry about that. We'll be doing a nice and smooth talk. We're gonna hear. We're just being here learning from you. I know you have been doing a lot of work for community. I have been seeing you in your code for years now, so I'm pretty sure this is gonna be amazing. So I'm gonna just be quiet for a while. I give you a few minutes for you can introduce yourself, talk a little bit what you have been done, and after that, you just let me. We can go and start the talk. What do you think about it?
Yes, we can do that. Just in the talk, I had some presentation of myself, so maybe I can start and right
Yeah,
now and yeah.
yeah, that's amazing. Let me just. I'm gonna add your screen. You can
Okay.
now. You are now on the
Yeah.
screen, and I'm gonna take off this little icon on the corner because it's taking off your screen. I'm gonna be on background. If you need anything, just please let me know when I'm gonna be right here. Okay?
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, hi everyone. Today I will introduce you Binder, my next my state management solution. So um, before this, I want to introduce myself. So I'm Romain Rastel. I'm a French Flutter lead developer. Until yesterday, I worked at Orange Business Services, but right now I'm in vacation and I will start a new challenge next year. So if you want, you can follow me on Twitter with this handle. And I have some packages, Flutter packages on GitHub. So if you want, you can see them in my GitHub. So about my experience of Flutter, I discovered Flutter in 2017, and before that, I was Xamarin developer. I built some application with Xamarin, which is a cross-platform framework from Microsoft, and it was great. But I was really bothered by some things, especially by the deployment part, because with Xamarin, it took like 5 minutes to deploy the application on the device, and it was really slow for the development process. And when a coworker of mine told me about Flutter, and I tested, and I saw the hot reload feature, I was amazed. So I studied from 2017. I wanted to do Flutter my full-time job. So I told about Flutter to my coworker and to my bosses, and it took times. But eventually, in 2018, I was able to build applications with Flutter in full time. So it was really great. But in the same time, in my free time, I also contributed to the Flutter community with some things like articles. I wrote some blog posts on Medium, so you can find them by typing Romain Rastel, I think, on Medium. Some of them talk about my packages. Some of them talk about how to build your code. The last one maybe is about don't put everything in one widget, something like that. I don't remember well the name, but something like that. And I also created more than 10 packages for Flutter, and I will present you the last one. So, about Binder. I'm sure you wonder why another state management solution. We have a ton of them. I think we have some 33, 34, 36, maybe now, packages about state management. And I know it's a lot. What I want to say to you, to me, there is no best state management solution. The best one for you is maybe not the best one for another team or another person. So what I want to say is the best state management solution is the one that you and your team are comfortable with. If you have some knowledge about streams and Eric's Dart, it will be really great to work with block for you, with the block pattern for you. But if you don't have any knowledge, maybe using this pattern will be a bit difficult for you. So that's why I want to say that there is no best state management solution. There is one that fits your needs, and there is the other ones. So the following content is highly subjective. It's my opinion. It's not, you can disagree with me. It's not a problem. It's how I felt with the following packages. So I will start with something that it's not a package, but a pattern, the block pattern. And I will explain you why the block pattern does not suit me. The first thing, I think it's the complexity of this pattern, because it's lays out of streams, and if you want to have the full the full power of streams, sometimes you will have to use another package called Eric's Dart, which will give you some of the features over the streams implemented in Dart. And if you have no background in reactive programming, it can be really hard to create applications with the block pattern. And that's why I think it's not for everybody. It's, for me, the reactive programming is another paradigm, and it's not. Maybe it's not for beginners, or maybe it's not for someone who has an Android background. I don't know. It depends on what you work with Android, but for me it doesn't fit. I tried reactive programming before Xamarin in one project. At first it was really cool, but it was not easy for coworkers to understand everything with the reactive programming. So I think if you have a team and if one person of the team has no knowledge of this, it can be hard to use the block pattern in that team. The other thing that bothers me with the block pattern is the boilerplate, because you have to use streams, things, and methods in your block to shadow the same thing. And every time you want to provide a single property over streams, you have to create three things. So it can be redundant and not very cool to use. The other package I tried when I was at Orange, and it was actually the first state management solution I tried on a real app, and it was Flutterblock. But to me, Flutterblock is not the block pattern. Maybe internally, yes, they use a block pattern, but from the user side, to me, it's a maybe more a Redux pattern than the block one. But that's not that bother me. It's the boilerplate. When you use Flutter block, you have to create a block class, multiple state classes, and multiple state events classes. And for simple screens, it's okay. You maybe have, I don't know, four or five states and 3 or 4 events, depending on the interaction you can provide to the user. And okay, for simple screens, it's okay. But for complex ones, it can be really a mess. When we use a Flutter block in our app, we had some complex screens, and it was really difficult to use Flutter block with that. Or maybe we didn't use it well, but it was difficult for us to use this package in very complex screens, because we had multiple states and multiple events, and it was really a lot. So that's why Flutter block does not suit our needs at this time. Then we switch to provider. Here, I say provider plus X because provider by itself is not a state management solution. It can provide some objects below the tree, to widgets below the tree, but it will not. It's not a. You will have to have something else to really procure a state management solution. At Orange, we used provider plus change notifier provider, change notifier, and this is what I will talk about. So the provider plus change notifier, provider itself by itself, I think it's great, but there are a lot of provider. There are stream provider, state notifier provider, change notifier provider, and all the proxy ones. And when I discovered it, I thought it was great. But when I introduced provider to my coworkers, I see that it was a lot for them to swallow, because there was a lot of possibilities, and it was complicated to know which one to use. And be apart the providers, there are also the constructors. There are 2 types of constructors: the value ones and the default ones. And for some of my coworkers, it was difficult to know at first which one to use. So for me, provider is great, but there was some kind of learning curve for really using this provider, this package. The second thing that bothers me is the way we can have dependencies. For example, if you have an API client, you can provide it to your widget with provider and API client. Okay, but if this API client have multiple dependencies from other providers, you will have to use a proxy provider to get these dependencies, and you will have to do some boilerplate for each dependencies to make sure that each dependency changes when the update of the proxy provider is called, because maybe the update is called just because the widget is rebuilding itself, and if you want to trigger some method when one of the dependency change, you have to make sure that the dependency really changed. So it involved a lot of boilerplate to me, and in small apps it's okay. You don't have really a lot of dependencies, but the last project I worked on, it was a really big project, a project with a really big project with multiple subproducts. At each subproduct had a lot of customers behind, and we use a provider plus change identifier for this, but because we had a lot of dependencies, at the end it was really complicated to add a dependency, because we had to add it to all our services, and it was not really good for the speed development. The other thing that bothered me is the testability. By testability, I don't want to say that provider is not testable. No, it's really testable. That's not the thing. It's that when you use a provider and you have a big app, you will have a big provider tree, a big multi-provider with a lot of provider in the multi-provider. And for test this big widget, you will have to create a widget with as many as parameters as provider you have in your multi-provider, and it can be really tedious to do. And if you have all your providers above the material app, it can be good. But if you have some depending on your app, but if you have a multi-provider above your material app and multiple other multi-providers in other parts of your app, you have to do this big widget with a big constructor for every multi-provider. So it can be very tedious to do also. And the last thing is that provider only works by type. You can't have, well, you can have two provider of strings, but the widget below the provider will only see the provider of string which is the nearest above the widget. So you can't use two provider strings in the same widget. And to do it, you will have to wrap any string, for example, in particular class. For example, if you want to have a string A and string B, maybe you will have to create a class A with the string A and a class B with the string B, and provide class B and provide class A, so that a widget can watch class A and class B and get the strings. So it can be some kind of boilerplate too, because you will have to create some classes just for that. And I also watch Riverpod when the author or provider published it. And at first I thought it was really great, because all the things that provider bother me, it was resolved by this. But not all the things yet, because there are still the learning curve, because there are a lot of providers also, the same ones, plus state notifier provider, and maybe also another one. And also because there are some concepts that are maybe difficult to apprehend, like the family, auto-dispose, and I don't know if there are other one, but there are a lot of other concepts. So there is also a big learning curve to get to use Riverpod. But there is another thing that bothers me. It's a code ownership. So what I want to say about that is, when you use a package from another person, there's something that you have to make sure, or to take into account. There are a lot of things that can happen for a package that is maintained for another person. Maybe one day this person won't be able to maintain it, or something like that. And you have to make sure that you understand the code, and you can recreate the code if you want, and you can fix some things that you think that are bugs, and you can make your own improvements. Sorry. And when I look at the code of Riverpod, because it's a big re-implementation of inherited widgets, but without Flutter, it's a lot of code, and it can be difficult to dive in the code and debugging if you have to debug it. So that's why it doesn't suit me either. So Binder is not my first attempt for state management. I wrote over packages before. The first one was Kiwi. At first, it was just an IAC container for Dart and Flutter. And I created it 2 years ago. There are something now, I think I will not do something like that because, I will say that later, but when I used Provider, I saw the problem of Kiwi and I stopped using it. And because there are other users that use Kiwi and I didn't want to maintain it, I transfer the ownership to someone else in the Flutter community so that it can provide them maintenance and evolutions. What bothered me with Kiwi was the first thing was the fact that the widgets does not rebuild when the state changes. And this is something really great with Provider because when you use a change identifier Provider, for example, with Provider, every time your change identifier changes, your widgets are automatically rebuilt, and that thing is really great. But I didn't did it in Kiwi because I went from .NET from the .NET world at that time, and I didn't see all the potential of widget rebuilding. And the other things that bothered me was the code generation. In Kiwi, you have to each time you have a dependency in a class, you have to put this dependency as a parameter in the constructor of your class. It can be very tedious to do, so I put code generation to do it, to generate the code for that. Okay, it was great for this, but sometimes you don't want to use code generation because depending on your strategy, maybe you will put it on Git or not. But if you put it on Git, you can have conflicts when you do your commits. And if you don't do this, you will have to generate the code each time you pull something from Git. So code generation have some advantages, but also drawbacks. And if you can make something without code generation, I think it can be great, better. My second attempt was previously this year, and it was an experimentation around untitled widgets and stateful widgets. I wanted to see if just untitled widgets and stateful one, I could do something like I could do a state management solution. So I started this, in May, and the main goal for this package was to make a clear separation of business logic and state. It was pretty good for my opinion, but there was some thing that I didn't like, and I discontinued the package. The thing that bothered me was the same thing that Provider in a lot of ways, because it was the same strategy. So the thing about the big widgets for the testability, it's also a drawback for Maestro. And same thing for about the type, because in Maestro is like Provider, you will have a Maestro of a string. You can't have two Maestro of strings. You can't call two Maestro of strings of different strings in your widgets. So that's why I wanted to create another packages. and it was Binder. So I was really inspired by Recoil, a state management solution from React, and also Riverpod. So you will have a lot of similarities between these two packages. So I started it 2 months. Well, we are in November, yeah. So in October. You can find it on Pub, on my GitHub, and I also created an extension for VS Code which have some snippets to speed the development process. One of the concepts you have to take into account with Binder is the concept of scope. To make the things clear, the scope is just a map from something I call a reference, which is a key, to a state or something else, the logic. You just have to take into account that a scope is just a map. So I will talk about scope later. Just have into your head that it's just a map, and you can get a state with a reference, and you can also get a logic with a reference. So the promises of Binder. The first promises is the separation of concerns. I really want to separate the state from the logic and from the view. So in my opinion, the app state is not a global object. It's multiple tiny objects which, when you aggregate all of them, you will have the global state of the application. And in Binder, each state can be watched by the view, by a widget, a text, something, not a text, but a widget you will create. And the view will use something I call a logic to update your state. So this is a unidirectional data flow, as we can see in other state management solutions. So the state in Binder should be immutable, because Binder will use equality to know if two states are different. So if your state is immutable, it will don't know if something has changed, because the old state and the new one will be the same instance, and Binder can't know if there something changed. So you have to use immutability for your states. On the upper right, you can see how to create a state reference. So if you remember when I talk about the scope, which is a map, a reference to state, for example. So here you can create a reference, a state reference like that. So it can be like in Riverpod, a global reference. It's not a problem, because this reference will never change. So you don't have any problem with that. So to create a reference, you will create a state ref, and here the 0 is the initial state of your state. The logic, you can create a reference of the logic like the state, but here instead of state ref, you will use logic ref. And the logic ref take a function which have as a parameter a scope. So remember the scope, the map. So it can access it. You can access it in the logic with that. And you can see that the logic is just a typical class with a specific mixin to so that you can get some useful method to change your state and get your state, get dependencies, get other logics. Here I have an increment method. This method will update counter ref. So you can see the update here. The first thing we do is reading the state referenced by counter ref. So it will look at the map, look what is the state associated to a counter ref. It will increment it, and then it will write it at the place where the state associated to counter ref was. And to watch it, to rebuild your tree, your widget tree, you just have to use an extension method on build context, which is watch. I took the same syntax as the provider to not so that the user will not be how to say that will understand what it is. So you give to watch the reference that you want of the state you want to watch, and then you get the state. So here counter is a state referenced by counter ref. And each time the state referenced by counter ref changes, this widget will be rebuilt thanks to watch. And to increment our counter here on the unpressed callback, we call the use method of it's also an extension method of binder, and you call it on the logic ref that you created before, so that you will get the instance which is stored also in the scope, and you can call the increment method. So the other thing I want to make in binder is the simplicity of the source code and of the API. For example, the scope I talked about is named binder scope, and you will typically put it above the material app, so that all your states and logics will be above the material app, and every widget in every pages will be able to get them. There is a big feature that you can use. This is the state selection, because in some imagine you have a big user class, a big user state with a lot of properties, first name, last name, age, so on. And you have a widget in your tree which is only interested in the first name, and you don't want you don't want that this widget rebuild when the age of the last name changes. So to do it, you will also the context swatch, but you use select something from the reference. You can use the select method, and this method get the user, and you can select what you are interested in. So in this example, we are interested in the first name, so we get it. So about provider, I talked about the way that dependencies can be very tedious to do. With binder, it's really easy, because every dependency can be get by calling the use method in your logic. So by convenience, when I want to use another logic, I create a getter, so that in all my methods I will only use the getter, which will in the end call use on the logic reference. So that if you have to add another dependency in your project, you just have to create this getter, and it's okay. And here we can see in the load method that we want, when we call the load method, to call the get all method of our repository, and put the data we get in the state referenced by the data ref reference. Another feature I think is really powerful is computed. With computed, you can watch multiple references and combine them to create a derived state that will be each time one of the reference changes, this will be called, and if the derived state changes, your widget will be rebuilt. So here, for example, I have some reference which makes the sum of two other references, and in my widget A, I'm able to watch the sum and to display it, and this widget will be rebuilt only if the sum changes. So if in the same time the A state and the B state swap, the sum don't changes, so that the widget will not rebuild because the sum didn't change. Another thing that I wanted to add in Binder was undo and redo. And we can do it with a different scope called memento scope, which is a scope which is able to retain all the previous states. When I say all, it's not really all, because you can specify how many the size of the history. And you can undo and redo simply by using the undo and redo method that each logic can have if it applies the logic mixin. I also wanted to make Bindable really easily testable. For example, if we have an API client reference, we want to mock it in our test, and that reference, we don't know where it's used, but we want that every time we use this API client ref, we want in our test that it's not the API client we create, the real API client, we want a mock. We'll do it like this. We'll first create a mock API client, and we'll create a specific binder scope with an overrides parameter. And in this override parameter, which take an array of overrides, we can say, okay, for API client ref, override each time you encounter API client ref in the code, override it with the mock API client and don't use the default one. So if you have an API logic below the tree, and if this logic call API client, in your test, it will not call the real API client, it will call the mock API client. I also created some examples. You can find them in the Binder repository. I created an architecture example so that you can see how to use it, how to use Binder, how I think, how I use Binder, or architecture my app to use Binder to separate your logic from your view and from your states. And also, because I did not talk about that, but it also uses the pattern explained in Flutterblock about repositories and data sources. I think this is a great pattern, and this pattern I use in this package. There is a typical counter app. There is also a Firebase login app so that you can see how to use Binder with Firebase. There is also an example about with Firestore. There is an example with Optimistic UI, so that Optimistic UI is when you call your server and you don't wait the server to answer. You will say that maybe, okay, I send a request and I'm not sure, but it will maybe give me this response so that I can display it in the view before I have the real response. And if the response I get is not the thing I display to the user, I'll change it. For example, for a chat message, when you send the message, you can display the message in in the screen, and you can have an icon on it to say that if the message is sent or delivered, etc., etc. And you can, with Optimistic UI, you display this message as it was received, but with this icon, you can you can see if it is really received or not, etc., etc. I also recreated the Shopper application you can find on the Flutter Dev website, which use provider, so that if you want to compare the two things, you can do it with the Shopper. I used pretty much the same widgets, etc., and you can compare the two packages together. I also implemented the to-do package of Riverpod with Binder, so that you can also compare if you want. There is an example for undo redo. Just a simple example with the counter and the color of the app that can change. And I have pretty complicated application example. The use case behind it is you have a lot of users and you have a lot of devices, and each user can have one or multiple devices. And I wanted to see if Binder was really great for this, and I didn't have any difficulty to implement this app with Binder, so it was great. So there is also a kind of roadmap behind Binders. I want to create some kind of state restoration, because I want to provide users to be able to save the state when the app is killed, and to retrieve it when the app restarts. So I want to work on something like that, so that it will be great. One thing, when I had multiple feedback on the documentation on the GitHub. For the moment, it's just a big README, and it's not very really great, I think. And I will maybe create a dedicated website with documentation and tutorials, like Flutterblock or Riverpod and others. But I will only do it if there is enough traction. If there is enough people interested in this package, because it will take a lot of time, and I prefer coding rather than doing documentation and tutorials. So I will do it, but only if there is a lot of people that are interested in it. There also a nice thing I see, I think 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago. A person published Flutterblock DevTools, which is a dev tool for Flutterblock. But with this dev tool, you can analyze while your app is running. You can see all the states of the application. When you change the state, you can see that the state change, etc. You can have this story, and I think it would be really great to have something like that with Binder. I don't know if I can know which widget will be rebuilt, but if I can know that, it will be great to let the user know this. So that's it. I finished that presentation. So if you have any question, you can make them in the comments, and I can answer them.
Yeah. Hello, back. I'm back. Yeah. I mean, I have some comments in here. Maybe if you want to go through some of them. But yeah, definitely it was amazing talk. They were doing some questions while you were answering it. I don't even say anything to you, so I'm gonna skip that. And you can go move a little bit back and the video and look the moments when he answered, like. Diego asked what happens with Maestro package, and you answered that like 2 minutes after that. So Yeah, I says Sergio Eric ask what binder does different. I think the question was about maybe he can correct me if I getting lost on here, but he was asking about the what is different in between binders, provider, and report about the learning curve. How this is easier than the other ones.
Uh, to me, it's easier because Binder have a smaller API surface. So you don't have a lot of you have a lot of widgets, but you don't have to use them if you don't want to at first. You just have to know the state ref, logic ref, Binder scope, uh, and the context swatch, select and computed if you want to. And with that, you can do your all up. I created other widgets to simplify some use cases, but if you don't want, you don't have to use them. And it's Binder don't work with Binder. You don't have a stream provider. We don't have a feature provider, something like that. It's really how to say that directed. You will have to use immutable states and your own logics, but after that, you won't have a dedicated widget for streams and dedicated one for features. It's only you call context.watch to watch them in your widgets, and that's all. It's a smaller API, so that's why I think it's easier to understand and to use.
Yeah, you don't have to be learning about if you are using a change notifier or a feature or anything else. You have to your scope, you have your logic, you have your views, and they are communicated. And you do what you have to do in your logic, and you're gonna get back your information, and that's it. It doesn't matter the type of the provider or whatever you want to call it. Okay. This is like a binder looks like a light, like the way Riverbot there was commenting here. They're very similar, says Frank Moreno. And he says that he seems like Riverbot has more things. He's gonna be analyzing, so he can do a real comparison in between them. But I asked them because, well, I mean, I understand the comment, but sometimes, okay, you're saying there needs more, but which one? Which more? So, and he, one of them, as say that he has more providers like future providers, state notifier. But actually, this is the just what you already says that you don't care about this in Binder. You have your logic to do whatever they have to do and notify, and this is going to get back to your state and it's going to notify your UI. So that's why Binder doesn't have future state notifier stream provider. You have your logic separated, and that's going to send you back the information to your state, and that's going to say you rebuild, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. In his Dimitris Tutsios, I hopefully I'm gonna pronounce that right. Sorry if I'm not. This is a lot of similarities between Riverpod and this state management handling.
Yeah, I don't hide it. I really was inspired by Riverpod, Recoil. That's why there are a lot of similarities. Rémi Rousselet did an amazing job with the Riverpod, and I just want to extract the part that I was interested in and make a package. I didn't want to make. I couldn't make a pair to Riverpod because Riverpod is a big factory, if you want, not factory, a big mall, if you want. You can have every tool you want. You can have it with Riverpod, but in my opinion, you will have to be a carpenter to use a specific kind of tool, and with Binder, you don't have to know everything, just some concepts, and it's okay.
Okay. This is a question in here. It says if Binder is compile safety like Riverpod.
Yes, it's the same kind of thing, I think, because I use also like it. I will use the reference, the global the global reference. Yes, I think it's. I don't like the term compile safe because in Riverpod it's not really compile safe. You can have runtime exceptions. So with Binder, maybe you can. Yes, you can have a runtime exception with Binder if you have computed with the watch another computed and this other computed watch the one before. If you make a cycle like this, you will have, I think it's a Stack Overflow exception. So yes, it's not compile safe, but I'm sure Riverpod is not compile safe either. It says in the README, but for me, it's compile safe in the sense of you will not have provider not found exception on Riverpod. That's true, but you can have other exceptions.
Okay. I have Martins is ask, how's the performance with too many selects around the app?
That's a thing I want to get. I didn't do a lot of benchmark because I didn't see some lags. So for me, it's okay to use it, but I want to use it in a big app, and for this, yeah, we'll have to take some time to create this big app to see it. And I don't see performances are really important in the case of state management because you don't you will not rebuild all the widget every time every seconds. You will rebuild them not a lot of times normally. So state management for me have to be easy to learn and to use, but okay, you have to be performant, but if you don't see any lags in your applications, it have to be good.
Okay, that I have I was reading all the comments, yeah, so be sure I not jump one or other, and I forgot my question. um, but yeah, I mean, do you remember that this is pretty new? It has like been around 2 months being unstored, so it's gonna be some gaps. It's gonna be a lot of improvement, but it's a pretty good starting point, if I may say. So I have a new question. I didn't see that. Let me put it on screen. It says, what does binder scope is in this code? Well, I don't know if you are seeing the screen.
Okay, yeah. There are something I didn't say in this talk because there are a lot of things to say, and I didn't want to give you a lot of information all in once. So in this code, I use override. How to say that? Imagine you have a list of a list, and with every list you have okay, I will take an example. I have to think about it. Okay, let's say we have a list of news. Each news, maybe each tile of the list can have a button to put the news in favorite. And maybe you want each tile to have its own logic. And if you want each tile to have its own logic and if its own state, but you only want to use one reference to do it, I'm not sure I will be able to explain it in English, but you can use one reference and multiple binder scope to scope this reference to subtrees under this binder scope. They will use the same reference, but because they use a different binder scope, the state of the widgets below them will be stored in their binder scope and not in the binder scope above the material app.
So it's like for making a space to rebuild only the ones you have and not being rebuilding everything else in that list. It's like cleaning the tree for rebuild all in that scope only.
Now it's more about like when you have a variable in your in a method and you have a for loop and you can redefine the variable in your for loop, and outside the for loop, the variable can be maybe um, another how to say that. Well, you can. I need to have some code. You can outside of a loop, you can have a final a equals zero, equals zero.
Yeah.
In your for loop, maybe you can say final a equal 1, and after the for loop, the a will be equal to 0 and not 1. And in the case of binder scope, it's the same thing. It's a scope, and the widgets behind the scope will see only the state you
Okay.
put in. You override. You overridden, and when these widgets are dropped, the state as the state of before will be I'm not really good at English.
No,
Sorry.
let's no worry. Let's do this some other time if you want to be like when you are more have more examples that you feel like now I can show you why is this and why is that. So maybe if you want to, we can have a little more code and instead of just a talk, and you can go to whatever you need to. You can do it on your side, and I can just help you out to promote it. It's after you. But yeah, I think sometimes more the more complicated for people, the newcomers or the ones like myself that were so related to use provider right now in the work in work. I'm using at work. I'm using Redux. They're a huge boilerplate for Redux. I mean, I have feel like I'm comfortable. I understand plenty of those, but it's a huge boilerplate for Redux,
Yeah.
and so just like get a basic. Sometimes I have been asking a lot how to get something on your provider and send it to your UI, and it's some really simple. But if you're trying to look at an example for that, it's so hard to find something like that, and for newcomers it's really hard. Like, okay, I'm here, I'm on init state, gonna execute this, go to API call, get information, and send it to my widget. It's an easy example, but you can find anything around because all the
Yeah.
people just had my counter, my this little example, and a huge one. So it jumps like I'm gonna have you to how to crawl, and then you're gonna be jumping with I don't know, jumping around in a bungee. It's like a huge gap in between acknowledge for some stage management. Some people that's why they trying sometimes to don't use when they can find information. So I understand that not all people trying to go there and learn and write and go through the code, and sometimes it's really hard because uh, you're using complex commands in code and whatever, and people that is new is just getting lost in it. So if you have more time later, you can do a video. We can help you out to promote it, and people get into it because sometimes that's the main issue. Okay, I'm gonna use it. I want something simple. Got to do JSON and get the values and put it on my screen. I wanted to do an API call and get it back and show it on my screen. And I don't know if you have it, but I haven't seen what to do a whole set of examples. But most of the code that I see, it's hard to understand because I'm seeing the Brian Egan GitHub, and it's a to do, but it's pretty complex to do.
Yeah.
It's really hard to understand when you don't know. I mean, I can see and I say, okay, I can get it, but it took me a while to understand that. So sometimes people that is new are gonna to get into this. They're gonna try maybe something basic and they get stuck because they don't have an easy example. I don't mean it's not like getting by the hand and you have to learn this and that. No, it's like the basic examples to go there, go back, and jump in small steps. But sometimes okay, you have the basic, you need to learn the rest, but sometimes it's like a pretty basic counter app with no API interaction and anything, and then a whole app with a lot of calls and UI and awesome stuff, and you get lost in between how
Yeah,
you
okay.
get from here to that.
Yeah,
I see some other comments. I don't know if you have something to say about that.
that's why I wanted to create a lot of examples so that you can, if you are interested in some kind of a specific part of some things, you can see it. Like the undo redo. If you want to see in a simple app how to do undo redo, you see this example, and you will have only a short main with this kind of example. Um,
I have
but
a couple of
yeah,
comments. Actually, Frank says the overrides allows to share the state only to the sentence widget without saving it in the root binder scope. I think it was like the one you were
yeah,
trying to, yeah,
yeah,
you're
that's
the
it.
one you
Yeah,
were trying to, yeah, that's the one.
yeah, better explained. Thanks.
Yeah. Martin says one thing that I don't really like about ReverPod is that we need to replace a stateless widget with consumer widgets, and this is not actually true, Martin. You can also only use like a reference and use keep using your stateless and move only to use a consumer like provider consumer and add the reference to watch the one you want to use. You don't have to do it. You can do it. That's differently, but you it's not exactly like that. I can relate it. I recommend you to see a Razor Coder video from this week. I think he make
Yeah,
some basic examples about the use of Riverpod with the difference in between use consumer widget instead of stateless widget and how to avoid that because sometimes this is something important in all stage management. You don't have to use the reference that's going to be revealed in your whole widget on top of the widget because it's going to be the same that you set state because it's going to be revealed in the whole widget. So use it at small scope as you can. If you're using a small widget and you're building like text, okay, that's good. If your base widget for that widget is going to be the consumer, if you're going to only reveal the number, the counter, it's not a good idea. Put it on top of everything. It's just change one little number on the bottom. It's just that it's not riverpod, it's not provider, it's not binder, it's not blah blah blah. But like you said, 36 around it
something
is
like that.
basic Flutter knowledge. Do not use it like this because it's the same if you're not using anything and do a set state all the way. Um, yeah, Eric says that it's not true. Uh, okay, now it's more clear about the comments of Frank. Uh, And yeah, I mean that they're talking about it. Yeah, that's why I'm here, and that's why Romain is here, and I really appreciate. If you don't have any other question, I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes. So you have more to ask. In the meanwhile, Romain, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This was amazing. I don't know if I'm gonna be waiting. I'm gonna be learning. I'm gonna go through all examples and if you want to do you people know you remain want to do some PR for binders, help out with examples, please feel free to do it. This is always helpful. This is a community work. We are not being paid for anything of this, so it's more like help and help others. So please, if
Exactly.
you can, please do. I know Romain is going to be happy with that. I'm
Yeah,
going to be happy with that because I'm having all its. I mean, my channel is called Community Rain, so it's everything about community. I'm going to give you. If you want to say something before we finish, Romain is going to give you time for you to say goodbye or something.
well, just say thank you for having me here, and to so that I could introduce a binder to a lot of people. I think I don't know, or maybe uh,
I
ma-
I
many
don't I don't
people
know.
are here, but
Yeah,
but it's good.
is the number right now. It's not important because right much of the time the people right now is related that
Yeah,
everything is going to be in YouTube. It's not a place you have to go. So because it's going to be in YouTube, it says okay, I can see whatever I want and whenever I want, and I gotta do some
mm,
popcorn and look at it later. So it's usually to this having happened a lot, and since we are this new normal way to live. So yeah, I mean, thank you again. I know it's gonna be people that's still talking in here. I'm gonna put this on Twitter and the Facebook groups or whatever places I can, because I think it was an amazing the way you compare in between why another stage manager is not don't suit you. That was amazing. It was something that I told you, so surprised me when you really did. So that
it's
was amazing.
it's my opinion.
Yeah,
What I want to say, it's like I said before, there is no best state management. There is the one you're comfortable with, and it's my opinion. When I use it, I feel that, but maybe you don't feel that, or and maybe you're really comfortable with the state management solution. So keep it. If you're really comfortable with another one, I
yeah.
don't mind. It's really great.
Yeah, like in the documentation says that they asked to the creator of Redux about the
Hmm?
stage management and which one is the best one, and he says that is the one that felt less awkward. So
Yeah, that's it.
that's it. I really get a lot of fun. I was laughing myself here alone, alone in my home. But yeah, it's the one that feels less awkward. That's the one you can go there, sit and work with it, and feel comfortable doing your work. You is communicating between them. Some one could be better than the other one, but you also have to remember like the what happens with provider and Riverpod. And at the moment, provider was an excellent option. And then the same creator says, well, they have a lack of a lot of things.
Yeah.
So that's going to be happening. Now, I have one more question for you, and that's going to be it. How is your place right now for start moving this to null safety? Because we know every single one of us have to keep moving our code to null safety. So, what do you think is gonna start doing it since now, or gonna wait a little bit more? What is your idea in there?
I don't really know. Maybe in December, because now I'm in vacation, so maybe I will have time to do it. Uh, yeah, maybe in December.
Yeah, that's it for me. Just we're gonna close everything up, and when I get back to you, please don't go, man.
Okay, thanks.
Uh, so thank you very much for being here. It was amazing having Romain here. I know some of you are going to be seeing in other time. Really glad to be here. Please share. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave your comments in here. What are you going to see next? Where you like more about these? What are your thoughts about Binder? I know this is going to be amazing for the newcomers and for all that already have been here for a while and have to want to be like try new ways to move your state around the app. So that's what I'm gonna say. Thank you all for being here, and gonna be seeing you to the next time.